honestly expressing yourself. Now, it is very difficult to do, okay? I mean, it is easy for me to put on a show and be cocky and be flooded with a cocky feeling and then feel like pretty cool and all that. Or I can make all kinds of phony things, you see what I mean? Blinded by it. Or I can show you some really fancy movement. But to express oneself honestly, not lying to oneself, and to express myself honestly, now that, my friend, is very hard to do. And you have to train. You have to keep your reflexes so that when you want it, it's there.
We're about to show the latest attack, but a warning to you now, it is difficult to watch.
Recently, the physical attacks and assault on Asian Americans has increased dramatically. The mainstream media for months has avoided talking about this subject. To this day, the tragedy and impact of these attacks are underreported. Asian men and women live in fear, and what you're about to see, an attempt is made to gather a systematic perspective of this situation. We will look into the past to help us get a perspective of the present problems the Asian community faces, especially Asian men. The truth is far more complicated than can be presented in one YouTube video. Many generalizations are made, but are necessary for the sake of this message. It is true that Asians are getting attacked on the streets by ignorant thugs. However, the Asian community, and especially Asian men, are under a far larger systematic attack than the world is aware of. It is this systematic manipulation of the Asian race that is giving low-life thugs the courage and audacity to ambush and attack Asians. To stop these attacks, we will have to take a step back so we can see the big picture that the mainstream media and the elites are trying to hide from us all.
I've been asking law enforcement experts why we keep seeing these horrific incidents against the Asian American community as awareness of the problem is going up. It's growing, right? Well, the answer so far has been a combination of increased reporting of these incidents, which is an important thing, and a possible issue of copycat violence targeting vulnerable AAPI members of all ages. Now, overall, hate crimes against Asian Americans rose nearly 150% nationwide last year.
Asian cultures, while different from one another, all share a common value of honor and pride. This sense of honor is the foundation of masculinity. One of the largest examples of honor can be found in the Japanese soldiers of World War II. The Japanese army to this day is the most feared modern army because of honor. These Japanese men are willing to die on the battlefield for what they believed in. A group of men unified by a single goal, showing the world the apex of masculinity. Their willingness to sacrifice their own life is what made the Japanese army immortal in the eyes of the enemies. August 6, 1945, a B-29 bomber dropped the world's first deployed atomic bomb over the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The forbidden weapon used because it was the only thing that could defeat the spirit of the samurai. The Shaolin monks are a special breed of warrior, raised in the culture of men, raised in the culture of discipline, meditation, and spirituality. Foremost, the Shaolin preach peace, but understand that there is a hard line to passiveness and diplomacy. Millennia ago, the Shaolin adopted a fighting style to defend themselves, their beliefs, and the people around them. Over time, this created one of the most respected group of warriors. It is for their sacrifice and discipline which has allowed the Shaolin philosophy to live on still to this day, despite all of the adversity. In general, the spirit of the Buddhist monk has been a staple of humanity, and we're all off better because of their sacrifice. June 11th, 1963, a Buddhist monk burned himself to death at a busy intersection in Saigon. Martial arts have developed over centuries in East Asia. Most have been a form of self-defense and a way for boys to become men. Martial arts vary in technique and philosophy, but all possess a fighting spirit of manhood. Karate, judo, taekwondo, and Muay Thai, to name a few, have been a source of discipline and culture for many men around the world. Martial arts so popular that the best of the practitioners have had a chance to become movie stars themselves. Historic names such as Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and Jet Li appeared on a big screen and showed the world the romanticism of martial arts. In these movies, the lead character, played by an Asian man, left a strong impression on the audience through speed, power, and discipline. What do these three examples of Asian masculinity have in common? They're being erased from the cultural zeitgeist. In our lifetime, there's a war on masculinity in general. The rise of political feminism encourages women to become second-class men and men to become useless to society. What has this led to?
But this is your fight.
Yes, it is. We must see it through the tears. Oh, what's right, Kylo? No fucking way.
It is well documented in our current scientific literature that testosterone levels are dropping. However, it is one of the smaller worries Asian men face currently. With the surrender of the Japanese army came the slow demise of Asian masculinity. The CIA immediately launched a program to dismember the hypermasculine nature of Japanese/Asian men. This was to manipulate the Asian countries in case of a future conflict. They simply did not want to have to fight anything that resembled the feared Imperial Army of Japan ever again.
Sixth grade, I ask a girl out to a dance, and she says, I'm not into Asian guys. Okay, let me walk that one off. Well, maybe white people just date white people, right? Then I figured, let me ask an Asian girl out. Maybe she'll say yes. Hey, you want to go to this dance with me? Sorry, I don't find Asian guys attractive. Wow, okay. I remember when that first happened, I said to myself, why is it that Asian guys aren't seen attractive? Why am I clumped into this group of people that are seen as effeminate, stereotypical in math and science and skinny and weak and quiet? And when this happened repetitively, it became ingrained in me. All of a sudden, I started to believe the perceptions that people had of me. It's called conditioning. I was conditioned to believe this.
The rise of K-pop. The most feminine-looking boys are propped up to the mainstream, representing Asian men, effectively erasing the martial arts heroes of the past we used to love and worship on the big screen. This push of K-pop has played a key role in changing the perception of Asian men and encouraging less masculine behavior by promoting less masculine stereotypes. Japan now has the lowest birth rate and the numbers keep dropping. Instead of partaking in organic relationships with women, Japanese men opt out, hence creating herbivore men. The sex robot industry in the East is growing as a direct result of this tragic attack on Asian masculinity. The truth is that men will never fully understand their potential unless they have a wife and children to attend and protect. Men historically go to battle, die in war, not for their own sake, but for their women and children. Having a society in which men do not have wives nor children is a society that can easily be destroyed.
ダメダメ、もうエッチな妄想なんかにとらわれないんだから。だから先生、私の処女もらってくれませんか？
Hentai, a form of cartoon pornography, is yet another plague that is destroying the Asian masculinity. Young men are lured into fantasies and become oblivious to reality. Since we're discussing the topic of pornography, it is important to note the absence of Asian men in the porn industry. A quick search on the hub will leave you guessing why Asian men are mostly left out and only given the spotlight when keywords such as tentacles or bukkake are entered. This is yet another attack on Asian masculinity.
Playing white woman threesome.
No, Asian man.
Playing Asian twink gets pounded by massive black stud.
No, stop. Asian man, white woman.
Playing Asian man, Asian woman.
That's a beautiful thing, but for tonight, just do a search for Asian man, white woman.
It sounds like you are searching for Asian man, white woman?
Yes.
I have 0 search results.
What? How many videos are on Pornhub?
Over 30 million.
In this section, normally an attempt would be made to dissect yet another attack on Asian masculinity, the lady boys of Thailand. However, no comments will be added in this section.
네. 어떻게? 아, 오케이.
사진 준비되셨어요?
네.
네, 그러면 눈 떠주세요.
깜짝이야. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
저는 한국의 남양주에 살고 있는 28살 박찬은이라고 합니다. 안녕하세요.
반가워요.
반갑습니다. 굉장히 아름다우시네요.
감사합니다.
와.
The intent is not to further degrade Asian masculinity, but to make Asian men aware of the strong forces that are working against them. The United States, while being a young nation, has always been the symbol of freedom to the world. In general, the United States has worked towards destroying any form of institutional racism. However, as the Democratic Party has gained more and more control over policies, we have seen a rise in institutional racism against Asian Americans for the benefit of other minorities. Imagine spending your high school years listening to your parents and busting your butt to be a straight A student, achieving a 4.0 GPA and flawless ACT/SAT scores, only to be discriminated against based on your race.
Well, you don't have to imagine it. It's happening. And at arguably the most prestigious college in America, my alma mater, Harvard. The ethnic minority isn't blacks or Jews as it was in years past. The target this time is Asian Americans. And what Harvard wants is to suppress the number of Asian Americans admitted. Based on the data that Harvard was forced to turn over, economist Peter Asadiakono of Duke University concluded that with the same application profile in terms of test scores, extracurricular activities, and personality factors, an Asian American male applicant would only have a 25% chance of admission versus 32% if white, 77% if Hispanic, and 95% if black. What's the real-life result of all this? In 2013, Asian Americans made up 19% of the incoming freshman class. According to Harvard's own Office of Institutional Research, if the personality factors had not been rigged, that percentage would have been 43%. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 guarantees that no person in the United States shall, on the ground of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in or be denied benefits of or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Its insistence on seeing every person only through the prism of race, as if the most important thing any of us has to offer is the color of our skin. Not long ago, that was called racism. It's still called racism. It needs to end once and for all for the sake of deserving Asian American students, for the sake of Harvard's own integrity, and for the sake of the American principle that the rules must be the same for everyone. Chief Justice of the Supreme Court John Roberts said it best: "The way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race." It's time we did just that. I'm Lee Chang of the Asian American Legal Foundation for Prager University.
Communism plagues the Asian race. In today's age, the word communism exclusively brings to mind the nation of China. How is this related to Asian Americans getting attacked? The answer is simple. Communism takes away the rights of the individual and gives the ultimate command to a totalitarian government. A race that does not respect itself will not be respected by others. This universal destruction of individualism through political means directly devalues the worth of the communist population. While these are oppressive governments oppressing Asians, it is almost indistinguishable, especially to the ignorant eye, from Asians oppressing other Asians. Through totalitarian control over their economy, the Chinese Communist Party has essentially enslaved its own population for political and economic gain. The same American companies operating in China virtue signal to the world about equality and race, but have no problem outsourcing their labor to mega sweatshops in China. These same companies also do not care if the labor for their production comes literally from concentration/labor camps.
We found that since 2018, 2019, some of them are being released, and some, residents in Xinjiang are being rounded up, and they're sent out to other provinces in China, spread across the country, and they're working in factories that are in the supply chains of a number of, very famous global brands that we wear every day: Nike, Adidas, Apple. It's basically to strip the Uyghurs, this Turkic Muslim minority, of their very unique identity and culture. Some companies are directly using Uyghur labor to manufacture their product, and other companies, in a long, complicated supply chain, it might be second tier or third tier, there is Uyghur labor.
Twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous
Well, there's no question that China is one of the league's biggest markets, but for James, it's a bit more than that. He has a lucrative deal with Nike, and sneaker sales are a growing market in that country. He also has a starring role in the upcoming movie Space Jam 2, which has massive international appeal, so the stakes are pretty high for him.
Hong Kong is a great example to mention when discussing the plague of communism which destroys the perceptions of Asians across the world. In 2019, an extradition law was passed in Hong Kong, allowing for Hong Kong citizens to be trialed in mainland China for vague crimes. The people of Hong Kong rightfully rose up and protested to keep their sovereign rights. As Hong Kong slowly fell into the grips of the Chinese Communist Party, nobody came to the rescue. Not the political left, not the political right. The world watched from a distance, and politicians made their virtuous speeches and pushed their papers around as Hong Kong disappeared into a sea of red. The communist plague, known as C-19, started in communist China. To maintain public order, the communist government tried to cover up the spread. Once the impact of this outbreak affected other nations financially, people started asking questions. To win the political game of the 2020 elections, both the Republican and the Democratic Party sought to take this outbreak to their advantage. The right directly blamed the Chinese Communist Party for their cover-up efforts.
Why do you keep using this? A lot
Because
of
it
people
comes
say
from
it's
China.
racist.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China. I want to be accurate. Yeah, please, John. Please.
Are you
I
comfortable
have
with this term?
I have great love for all of the people from our country, but as you know, China tried to say at one point, maybe they stopped now, that it was caused by American soldiers. That can't happen. It's not going to happen. Not as long as I'm president. It comes from China.
The left, in congruence with the media, made these statements purely about race. The most ignorant group of the public interpreted that C-19 is the fault of Asians. So the attacks began. However, the political left is not without blame. With the rise of the BLM movement, the left encouraged more rioting and destruction throughout the entire nation. The media called this mass destruction mostly peaceful. The main goal was to make the BLM movement shine in a good light.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not generally speaking unruly. It is not unruly. It is not unruly.
Rioters set the city's 3rd precinct police station on fire.
It is not unruly. It is not unruly. It is not unruly.
Block 12! Block 12! Block 12! Block 12!
It is not unruly.
I have never seen anything like this. The building's beginning to collapse. The building is collapsing. The building just exploded. Oh my God!
It is not unruly.
They got to get it right. I mean, otherwise, this was going to happen. And ain't nothing left here. So when we start coming to the suburbs, when we come to the government center, then what y'all gonna do? You see what I'm saying?
Have been out here. Have you been out here the last couple of days?
Yeah. Well, I've been here all 4 nights. I'm just standing here today with soup for my family.
The media says this is just soup. These people are very, very innocent. They're innocent people. These are just protesters.
While Trump stokes fear with bizarre stories about mysterious people on a plane emerging from the dark shadows, preying on the defenseless masses with bags of soup.
Whoa, cans of soup, thugs on airplanes wearing black uniforms, people you've never heard of who were in the dark shadows. It's all from our president. He's just got these ideas.
I'm just standing here today with soup for my family.
Bags of soup
for my family.
Therefore, large news stations like CNN avoided talking about black on Asian attacks. So the problem grew and the Asian community stayed passive. Now the election is over, you can see a glimpse of Asian hate getting airtime on the news. By now, a lot of damage has been done. Attackers have realized they can target Asians and get away with it. Imagine this scenario. Imagine if a group of racially motivated Trump supporters attacked a black person. Who would be silent about that, and why is there so much silence about Asian hate?
Go.
After a quick search on YouTube, you will quickly realize that any kind of information and news about Asian attacks is completely censored by the YouTube algorithm. Only the mainstream media is allowed to have a voice on the YouTube platform. All the voices of individual Asians who are able to discuss this issue and who are trying to bring awareness for this problem are censored. It is ironic and funny enough that the YouTube CEO got the Freedom of Speech Award in 2021.
Susan Wojcicki is shaping the way that over 1 billion people access the media.
She is unquestionably one of the most powerful media executives on the planet.
Video has never been easier to create, it's never been easier to watch. And so we think about ourselves as a platform for the next generation of media companies to be able to create content and to distribute it to the world.
I'm so excited to be here tonight to present Susan Wojcicki with the Free Expression Award.
Hopefully by now, the picture is clear. Asian masculinity is being destroyed politically and systematically, creating an environment in which attackers do not fear retaliations from Asian men. Asian Americans are systematically discriminated against by the educational institution, exposing the passiveness of Asian culture. Finally, a large oppressive communist regime lowers the standard in which Asians are seen by the rest of the world. Throw on top of that the mainstream media's efforts to protect the BLM movement at all costs in the midst of a pandemic in an election year, and you have a recipe for Asian hate. All of this must stop now. The tide needs to turn. This change can only happen from the grassroots, and Asian men must lead the movement. Because Asian American voters are not numerous enough to sway elections, no political party or organization will care enough to solve the problems of Asian hate. It is simply a numbers game, and the numbers are against the Asian community. Holding signs that read, "Stop Asian Hate," posting on social media will have no effects in changing an attacker's mind. All this hippie and hipster virtue signaling of unity and love will mean nothing when you're standing over the hospital bed looking at your grandfather. If your mother gets attacked and loses an eye, will you think to yourself, "I wish more people would have posted on Instagram about Asian hate"? Or will you ask yourself, "How could I have protected my mother?" Everyone knows holding up a sign that reads, "Do not commit robbery" in front of a bank does not hold off criminals. Asian men must lead the way in protecting the Asian community because no one else will, and apparently no one else can. Politically hypnotized people will instantly start throwing their buzzword criticisms such as victim blaming, or when someone gets attacked in the street, it's not their fault. Do not listen to these people and dismantle their closed-minded arguments. These political trends cannot help you when you're getting attacked. We all have the instinct and responsibility to protect ourselves and our loved ones, especially against vicious thugs. Historically, the Asian community understood this fact of life. For example, the Shaolin monks, who preach love, unity, and discipline, trained daily to prepare themselves for combat. They understood that some enemies cannot be reasoned with, and physical defense is the last hope of survival. For another example, judo, the Japanese martial art, created to submit and to kill the opponent, literally translates to the gentle way. This is exactly what the philosophy of yin and yang teaches us. Light cannot exist without darkness, life cannot exist without death, safety cannot exist without deadly force. Self-defense is not popular because it takes hours of work and effort to be effective. There are many examples of people protecting themselves every day around the world from robbery and attacks. Self-defense is a right given by the Creator. It is something you do not need until you do. If you are an Asian American, exercise that constitutional right. Take preliminary precautions to attacks. Carry pepper spray. Practice using it. Buy a taser and understand the limitations of it. Plan your route and timing to where you're never alone in public, or at least try to minimize the time you are alone or exposed. Have a conversation with your spouse. Talk about it with your children. Have a plan of action in case an emergency does happen. There is an inherent risk that we all take when we go about our daily lives, and currently that risk is significantly larger for Asian Americans. Unfortunately, these stories of self-defense are not shared because they do not create enough hysteria and views for the networks. Asian culture is passive at large and tolerant. However, Asian Americans cannot afford to tolerate intolerance any longer. The final solution is always unity and love. But until that day comes, Asian Americans have the right and responsibility to protect themselves at all costs.
At that time, I was in the gun store. Then I have received a phone call from my employer. His name is Richard Park. He also owned a jewelry store right down the block there. And he said, David, we're having a gunfighting here. So can you just come over and help us? We already called police. And when I arrived here, at the beginning, I can see the LAPD, the vehicle with like 3-4 officers were there. So, oh, we have a police here, we are safe. But as soon as the gunfighting started, they ran away. Bye. So, we are on our own. Then what I saw from across the street is a lot of looters were armed, heavily armed, and they're shooting at us. My experience was, whoever actually attacked and looting the Koreatown was not African Americans. It was more likely Hispanic cholos or gangbangers. Bullet was coming to my face here and there, so I thought I'm going to get shot. So, naturally, I just trying to protect my face, my hands like this momentarily. Then I was thinking, oh, wait a minute, what am I doing? So I just, put it down. Whoever actually I saw having guns, I didn't hesitate to shoot them. Otherwise, I could have got shot. Some of them are popping up from there and there with their shotgun and handguns. In retrospect, it's a dangerous moment. And I was scared. But even though you're scared, you don't have much option. You have to fight.